U.S. Women's National Team Players Association. U.S. Soccer's identical deals proposal is a PR stunt. So what is this about now? Megan Rapinoe is so very happy that this is happening. This is the Soccer Federation, the U.S. Soccer Federation, offering the women and the men identical deals, identical pay structures. But the women's team is saying it's a PR stunt. Hello and welcome to my channel. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed, and then also click on that bell for notifications. Be sure to stick around to the end for your weekly moment of woke. Let's get into this article. Let's see what it has to say. The United States Women's National Team Players Association on Wednesday labeled the U.S. Soccer Federation's offer of identical contract proposals for both the men's and women's teams as nothing more than a publicity stunt. The U.S. Soccer Federation announced its offer on Tuesday as part of an effort it said was to align the women's and men's national teams under one collective bargaining agreement. U.S. Soccer PR stunt and bargaining through the media will not bring us any closer to a fair agreement, the women's team said on Twitter. In contrast, we are committed to bargaining in good faith to achieve equal pay and the safest working conditions possible. The proposal that the U.S. Soccer made recently to us does neither. The U.S. Soccer tweeted in response to the women's team, an offer on paper of identical contracts to the men's team and to discuss equalizing prize money is real, authentic, and in good faith. A publicity stunt is a 90-minute one-sided movie, it said. I don't know what that refers to. Speaking on Wednesday, the women's team forward Alex Morgan said the players were cautiously optimistic. Oh, are they? Sounds like they're not optimistic at all. We still need to chat about the statement given by U.S. Soccer, but any commitment to equal pay publicly is good, Morgan said. However, we need to look line by line at what they're actually providing, because if you have equal pay, but it's not even what we got before or to the value that we are, then we still consider that to be not good enough. And it's not going to be good enough for you. It's not going to be good enough for them because nothing will ever be good enough for them. Let's take a look here at this other article real quick. We'll come back to this one in a moment. U.S. Soccer offers men's and women's teams identical contract proposals. We look down here. This stands for collective bargaining agreement. The two collective bargaining agreements have widely differing structures. The men's bargaining agreement has a pure pay for play structure, while the women's bargaining agreement has more guaranteed money as well as benefits that include health care, pay for players in the National Women's Soccer League, and maternity and pregnancy leave and pay. The women's deal also includes injury pay, 401k plans, and severance. The men don't have any of that. But the women in 2019, they asked for $64 million in damages, plus $3 million in interest under the Equal Pay Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, the men only get paid if they play. Well, when COVID happened, men didn't get paid. Whereas the women get guaranteed pay. That's not going to necessarily be the case in this new contract. We don't know what the new contract is going to be, but they're going to have to give up probably lots of things that they already had, and that's the thing. The women agree to this because they want those guaranteed benefits, whereas the men don't get them. Now, where were we here? The U.S. women's team sued U.S. Soccer's governing body in 2019 over allegations of gender discrimination in compensation and nearly every other aspect of its playing conditions. Months later, the team won a fourth World Cup as fans during the final chanted equal pay. The lawsuit, which sought $66 million in damages under the Equal Pay Act, was dismissed, but the U.S. women's team has since appealed. The women's team current labor agreement expires at the end of 2021, while the men's team has been operating under the terms of a deal that expired in 2018. In announcing its offer on Tuesday, U.S. Soccer also said it would not agree to a labor agreement that does take the step of equalizing World Cup prize money, and invited the teams and their unions to join the federation to help find a solution. FIFA offered prize money of $30 million to the teams in the 2019 Women's World Cup, while the men took home $400 million in 2018. Why did that happen? Why would the men who are losing miserably, not even going to the World Cup, get $400 million? That's crazy talk. It has to do with this article right here. After years of debate, U.S. Soccer has publicly offered the same contract to the women. Come down here. Prize money for the 2018 Men's World Cup totaled $400 million, with winners France taking home $38 million. The prize money for the 2019 Women's Cup was just $30 million, with the U.S. women's team bringing home $4 million. It's tragic. The reason for the huge gap is that the Women's World Cup only generates around 2% of the revenue that the men's does. The 2018 Men's Cup generated $6.1 billion, whereas the women's brought home $131 million. Wow, that's a lot of money for one person to spend on a sporting event. Well, I guess if that's what their fan wants to do, they can do that. In May, the women's team filed a lawsuit against the United States Soccer Federation claiming it was owed equal pay. The lawsuit was dismissed pending appeal. The judge dismissed the case because the women had been paid more per game than the men. That was due to their achievement on the field. And this is another thing that they want to bring up and said, look, we are winning. We are winning, we are winning, we are winning. And yes, we are getting paid more per game, but it's only because we are winning that we're keep being paid more per game. Because we're only being paid slightly more than the men are being paid. So why is it that we have to bust our butts and do really well at this to get paid equal to what the men are getting paid? But they fail to recognize that their fan only drops $131 million for that Women's World Cup, whereas the Men's World Cup brings in $6.1 billion. That's a huge difference. Yeah, I mean, this person is wealthy. Obviously, if they can drop $131 million on a game, that's impressive, but a lot more people are interested in this is why. That's where you get the money difference from. So, see what else we have to talk about here. This is a little bit of information on the judge. The players, the men's team wants to back the women's team in their appeal, the wage claim. But down here we go, hey, the judge, Klausner in Los Angeles, threw out the pay claim in May 2020, ruling the women rejected a pay-to-play structure similar to the one in the men's agreement, and accepted greater base salaries and benefits than the men. The women asked the Ninth Circuit to overrule the trial court's ruling and put their wage claim back on track. The 3-judge panel is likely to hear oral arguments later in the year or early in 2022. Yeah, so you know what this strikes me as? The women set up this deal. They thought, we're not going to do very well at this. We're going to, the men are good players. They're going to do well, and so they can, they decided to take this option where they're going to get pay for play. It's fine. We could go that route, but I'd rather have that guaranteed pay because we're probably going to lose. We might not get as much interest in our sport as the men are getting in their sport. So let's go ahead and take the safe route. And then they took the safe route, and everything that they thought was going to happen happened differently. There was a lot more interest shown in the men. The men were losing. The women were winning. And so they're like, hey, that's not fair. That's not right. We deserve to get what we should have gotten in the first place, but we took the safe route. We have changed our minds and retroactively want to get paid for, making a bad decision. Well, honey, those are the breaks. If I decide to invest in something and my investment tanks, well, hey, I made that decision. I'm an adult. I'm a big boy. It's unfortunate, but I can't go to the stock market and go, hey, look, I invested in this thing and it lost money. I deserve to be compensated for that. No. I made the choice to invest in that. You made the choice to use this contract as opposed to the pay-for-play contract. What does this article here have to say? I think there was just a little bit of something added on with this one here. The women's team to fight U.S. soccer in equal pay row. Appeal says judge decision defies reality. Oh, yeah, I'm sure it does. So the appeal also makes the case that the federation's behavior is part of a larger pattern of indifference and discrimination against the women. It mentions the early days of the women's team, when the women had fewer staff than the men's team, had less staff than the men's team, and they had to make their own food runs during training and lug around their own equipment, while the men had all of that taken handled for them. They also say the federation refused to promote the team's games or pursue merchandising opportunities. Well, that's the case. Yeah, that's not right. That should not have happened, but you could sue for that. You could sue for damages regarding that. How much would that be? I don't know. That would be for the lawyers to decide on a reasonable amount of pay. But this is all about how the women are not treated well, and the media has picked it up, and they become media darlings. And too many people agree with this because they're not thinking critically. They're just saying, "Oh, not equal pay." Unequal pay, that's it. That's not right. We need to make sure that women are paid the same as men. Women need to be treated the same as men. But now the women are being offered equal pay, and they're like, oh, it's a lie. It's not true. They're not going to give us equal pay. You know, this just points to everything I always say. Women, get your asses back in the kitchen where you belong. And you know that's terribly misogynistic of me. I know I'm just a horrible person. You know what I just did today? I baked a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. Not because my wife isn't capable of that, but because I enjoy doing that. So men are capable of working in a kitchen too. There are plenty of men who have been chefs and bakers throughout the history of humanity. I'm not saying that men can't be in the kitchen. I'm not saying that women's place is only in the kitchen. I'm just using that tired trope because it tells you everything you need to know. Women need to stop worrying about pursuing a career. Do any of these women on the soccer team have children? Do they have husbands and children? Because that's really what we need women to focus on, is the family. That's really what we need. I mean, look at what's happening in the country right now. We don't have a southern border anymore. We got people trying to enforce southern border immigration, law enforcement trying to do that, and they're being reprimanded, and politicians are speaking out against their behavior to such a degree that they're saying that these people should be imprisoned for what they've done to protect the border. It doesn't make any sense to me. Our president can't even speak English, even though that's his native language. What else is going on that's just so great for this country? Oh, we got poop patrols in San Francisco. Okay, why is that? This is human feces too, not animal feces. It's bad enough that it would be animal feces that we'd have to deal with. We're dealing with human feces. We keep hearing about how half the country is wrong. It doesn't matter which side it comes from. It's one half of the country is wrong, the other half is right. I wonder what that's all about. Maybe it's because we got a bunch of whiny women around here crying about how they're not being treated the same in the workforce because they made decisions that didn't turn out in their favor. How dare they? So maybe if people focused on what was important in the world rather than focusing on the women getting paid more, but yet somehow that's unequal pay to their detriment, then the world would be a much better place. All right, so now it's time for your weekly moment of woke. This one pretty much speaks for itself. I'll let you listen.
White people are invested in the racist status quo for lots of reasons. And I think it's unfortunate, but I do think we have to see it as in our own best interests. So a couple things have to happen there. One is, it's a little more abstract, but it's like you almost have to dismantle your very identity to the core and rebuild it. Because even before I took my first breath, as my mother carried me in pregnancy, the forces of race were operating on us.
All right, thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like on this video before you head on out, because that only takes a second. And I'll see you in the next one.